You're watching an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Youngstown Mob Talk. I'm Johnny Ciccatelli. Beside me is my partner in true crime, of course, Mr. Jim Naples. Jim, good to see you. We've been off for a few weeks.
Yeah, it's been a little hectic, right? We had our big annual show over at Robbins Theater. It was a wonderful show. Great night out. Met a lot of our fans coming out. They enjoy these shows.
We had nothing but rave reviews. So thank you to everybody that came out to the Robbins Theater for a master class with a master burglar, Emil Denzio. Like we said, great reviews on that. Everybody loved the show. Was a fantastic crowd. We actually have the audio of that in our previous episode. So if you want to check that out, if you didn't get to make it to the Emil show, we recorded it for an audio only show. You could check that out. Gosh, anywhere you get amazing podcasts, honestly, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, Spotify. I think, we were looking at the demographics the other day. We're growing, man.
Absolutely. Just to give everybody out there kind of an idea, our top 3 places to listen to our podcasts are Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.
Yeah, those are definitely the number one apps, the top 3 apps for us. But you can really find us on, I think, if you look at our demographics, it's like 32 different platforms that people are listening to our show.
Yeah.
And of course, we've got our YouTube channel. So if you are just listening, don't forget, you can always check out with video at youtube.com/amazing podcast company. Or just search Youngstown Mob Talk. You'll find us right away on YouTube. So, we got plenty of videos out there. We have hundreds of hours of content now. Old news archive video, some great 2020s, datelines, things like that on the channel. You want to check those out.
Yeah, we've got a ton of stuff on there, Johnny. I mean, we've got Youngstown Mob Talk Live. We've got the Vice Squad. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We've got your Youngstown Still Standing documentary on there.
That's right. Your moments in Mahoning that you did in front of your Uncle Sandy's house.
Yeah. And for a lot of people that don't know, when I originally did that Moments in Mahoning, that was like one of the first pieces I did when I was a student at YSU, going back to college at 37. That was one of the first things that I did. And I threw it up on Facebook. And if you look at the original post, there's over almost 300,000 views on it. Wow. So, it was a pretty popular little piece that I did.
Yeah, I mean, popular is the key word here. We looked at the demographics again. It shows you what countries are listening to us, what states, what countries. First of all, in the United States, we are now coast to coast. We have from Youngstown to the East Coast, we've got a strong, heavy presence there, all the way down the West Coast. Some listeners in Mexico, some listeners in Canada.
Yeah.
And then all the way across the globe, right, Jim?
Yeah. And, you go over into, Eastern Europe. I mean, we have just about, almost at least half the countries in Eastern Europe listening to us. We've got some down in Africa. We've got some in the Middle East. We've got some listeners in India. We've got some listeners down in Australia, New Zealand.
Japan. United Kingdom's a huge one for us. Obviously, there's some in Italy as well. But yeah, if you guys are listening to us in another country, please give us a like, give us a review, subscribe to the channel.
Share us with your friends.
Yes.
That might be interested. We're looking to continue to grow this as much as possible, just to show the reach of this, what we talk about, right? The mob. I mean, these guys in Youngstown, they had reach all over the world. They really did.
Yeah, there's such the interest, I think, too, is also these are stories that people haven't heard yet, maybe from some of these other places. If you're not from Youngstown, you might not be familiar with these stories. And one of the kind of recurring comments that I hear a lot and I read and people send says, the Youngstown stories are so unbelievable. They're so cinematic. They sound like something straight out of a movie. And that's what really kind of stands out. We've all heard the Al Capone stories, for years and years, John Gotti stories for years and years.
Right.
We kind of hear the same stories a lot in some of these mob channels, and not to take anything away from those stories. Those are great stories. They deserve to be told. But as do the Youngstown stories.
Right.
So, we're here, we're focused on this area, right? Our hometown here, Crime Town, USA, right in the middle of the country, right? The Midwest. And these are stories that people don't hear about. So we're at a point in history now where we're able to tell and talk about these things that for the past 100 years, people were too afraid to talk about for good reason.
Yeah.
And we're at a point in history now where we can talk about this stuff. It's history. It's our history. So you know what? Embrace the history, learn from the history. And that's what we're doing. We're, historians at the end of the day.
And the thing is, Johnny, we, all this research that we do, we're constantly learning new stuff every
Always.
day, right? New connections.
Yeah.
Who these guys worked with. Some of these guys, let's take somebody that maybe not a lot of people know, Charlie Murgy, right?
Mm-hmm. Consigliere to Pittsburgh, and
yeah, former owner of the Sunrise Inn, a big fixture up in Warren, right?
Yep.
What a lot of people don't know is 2 of his brothers served time in the Western State Penitentiary for murder. At the same time,
would have been there, at the same time as somebody that
at the same time that my Uncle Sandy was there.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ties these guys together, right?
They always say that when guys get locked up, especially for a long stretch, they're not going to prison. They're going to college.
Yeah.
They're going to university. They're going to get their degree, their master's degree in crime. They go there and they come out with more of a connection and more knowledge than they went in.
Yeah.
And so you go in there and you make friends. Sandy was in there for over 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So you go in there and you make friends, you make allies and connections. You come out even stronger in that world than you went in. And when Sandy went in, by all accounts, he was just a young guy, a young, kind of ambitious thug, right?
Right.
Back in the day of John Dillinger.
Yeah.
When all these guys were kind of just going out and, the Great Depression was coming to an end, and they were just trying to make a buck.
Prohibition,
they were just trying to make a buck.
Bootlegging and
Some
bank robberies,
small robberies where they couldn't. Sandy got pinched on a robbery that netted him just over $2.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a big thing, but when he came out, of Western Penitentiary, he definitely had those connections and definitely had the know-how to take the next step in his criminal career.
Right. And a lot of these guys that we talk about on here, there's so much overlap, right? We've got Pittsburgh guys in Youngstown, we've got Cleveland guys in Youngstown, we've got Canton guys in Youngstown, we've got Youngstown guys in Canton. So we got these guys are like all over the map. Even some of the guys are going up to Detroit and Chicago,
Buffalo,
and Scranton and all these different places. And when you sit back and you start peeling the pages open of all these FOIA documents that we get, and you start to realize how interwoven everything is, right? Especially when you go back to the 50s and the 60s. You're dealing, a lot of them were either Calabrese, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Neapolitan. They had different factions. Sicilian. They had the different factions in each town, and those groups kind of kept to themselves, but they still worked with those other groups. If it was going to make money, they would do it.
Yeah.
But then you would see tensions rise when, say, one person from one group felt they got slighted by a person from another, or vice versa.
Yeah. You mentioned the Calabrese. It's interesting. At some point in our kind of etymologies or nomenclatures, the term changes from Calabrese to Calabrian, right?
Right.
But back then, they referred to each other as Calabrese.
Right.
They came from that area, the southern area of Italy. Reggio Calabria. That's a big town or a small town that a lot of these guys came from.
Right.
The Malamos and the Colautis and things like that. these guys, a lot of them came from the small villages, and that's where they had their ties, the familial ties. Back then, they stuck with each other when they came to America. And as you mentioned, the Sicilian group obviously gets a lot of the attention and a lot of the lore in American, mafia history. But the Calabrese get almost written off when they were some of the most powerful in the whole country.
Yeah.
So from Milano and Cleveland, he was on one of the originals on the commission,
right?
And all the way down to as we mentioned, Big Dom Malamo in Youngstown, and his nephew Jimmy Prado, and if you guys want to know more about those names, check out our other episodes. We'll go into all that stuff.
And the thing is now, so I just saw this the other day. I thought it was hilarious. They're actually building a bridge now from Sicily to southern Italy.
Wow!
So that people could commute back and forth and things like that. Because Italy's having a lot of trouble with work. Same thing we're having here. They don't have enough workers, things like that. But their birth rate's lower than ours here. So
yeah,
we kind of we share a lot of the same issues.
Sure.
As far as workforce and things like that. But, you look now in Italy, the biggest organized crime syndicate over there is the 'Ndrangheta, and they are made up primarily of Calabrians.
Yep, exactly. So, the image that you get of, most people who kind of maybe they only watch The Godfather or something, they have a very base level knowledge of the mafia. They think Sicilian, like you had to be 100% Sicilian. That's not true.
Right.
That is not true. The Calabrese were often overlooked.
And I think sometimes people forget too that Sicily is part of Italy.
Yeah.
It's not on its own, And some people, they get that misconception that
some differentiate,
right. And it's more of a way to differentiate regions, right?
Yeah.
So Sicily is a region of Italy, just like,
yeah.
Calabria is a region of Italy, and Tuscany, and all the different ones.
And of course, Sicily's got that long history of just being, invaded and taken over by different groups, right?
Right.
Back to the Moors and everything else. So it's got a long history. I don't want to pull up the True Romance clip, right, with Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken. Great scene if you haven't seen it, by the way.
But those invasions basically are what led us to the mob.
It was the constant distrust.
Yes, absolutely.
It was. And so they stuck together and they made their own.
Right. They led, they took care of their own neighborhoods and their own groups. And, you didn't go to the police. You went to the local neighborhood chieftain, as they called it, of the local borgata, and they would handle any issues that you had,
absolutely,
in your area.
You kind of mentioned, you touched on a little bit. We've kind of sparked a renewed interest in this town lately. We're seeing a lot of events pop up, a lot of cool things popping up, that are kind of exploring the mob history. We've got an event coming up here within the week at the Covelli Center. It's the Youngstown Phantoms, the hockey team.
Yeah.
They're doing a Crooked City promo night.
Yeah.
So we've been invited to come be guests, drop the puck for the hockey game for Crooked City night. So if you're in Youngstown, March 8th, be down at the Covelli Center. Come down, say hi. We're going to, maybe you'll hear some voices, see some people from the Crooked City show that we did podcast. If you haven't checked out Crooked City, if you're new to our show, I was a producer on that podcast. Check that out. It's available also anywhere you get podcasts. It's audio only, so you will not find it on YouTube. You'll only find it on the audio apps. But Crooked City, it's 15 episodes. Mark Smerling, true OG of true crime podcasts, the producer of Crime Town, which is another great podcast, and The Jinx on HBO. Awesome show. He won an Emmy for that. Mark's a great guy. Mark was the main voice behind the show. And, he hired me to help him out with that show. So I had a great time. Loved Crooked City. And we're going to kind of celebrate that on March 8th.
Yeah, I hope everybody comes out.
Yeah, and definitely. And you know what? We mentioned too that, this renewed interest we're seeing, we're doing, we've gotten offers. We're doing historical society talks here and there, some library talks here and there. Some big news here.
Yeah.
We actually just got approached by a publisher, and they want us to start writing some mob books, some Youngstown mob books. So if you're readers, if you're looking for some great stuff to read, keep an eye out for that.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it because there's so many projects, that we can kind of touch on.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's going to be a whole series of Youngstown books.
yeah.
So, for the avid readers out there, we're going to have tons of books coming your way, one at a time. And of course, the Youngstown Mob Tour app. Everybody's asking, where's
Yes.
the Youngstown Mob Tour app? We're in the final beta test for that app. We have right now 150 spots, mob spots, and locations that you'll be able to go check out your phone, no matter if you have an iPhone or an Android. It will give you turn-by-turn directions. It'll take your phone's navigation system and drive you to all of these spots. So if you want to see where such and such gangster lived, or maybe where he died, or where they hung out, those kind of things, the casinos, all that, that'll be in the Youngstown Mob Tour app. So please just stay tuned. We put a Facebook page up for that. When we get some updates, we're going to put them out there, but it will be out in 2024. So stay tuned for that. That'll be great.
One thing I wanted to touch on real quick, we've worked with a lot of people, and then we've heard, we've had some people get back to us and say, hey, we're not comfortable working with the mob theme stuff, right? And I understand that. But one thing I think that everybody's kind of missing, right? We talk about tourism in the Valley, okay?
Yeah, there is none.
With the launch of the app, right? The books, the podcasts, everything that we're doing, right? We're turning this into a tourist destination for this type of stuff, right?
Sure, yeah.
And my thought is, if the Valley would launch on like the Chamber of Commerce and things like that, and these groups would come on board and say, hey, how can we have a nice, well-rounded tourism destination here in Youngstown? And I think our mob history, the app and all that, I think it fits right in.
Yeah, I agree. If you guys want to talk, if you're listening to this and you're in the city of Youngstown or the Mahoning Valley, reach out to us. That's kind of how all this stuff started organically. We created the Mob Talk podcast because we wanted content for our Youngstown Mob group on Facebook. So we had all these people that joined the group, over 30,000 people. We figured we better give them some content. So that's what the Mob Talk podcast came from. From the group, we reached out to people like Charlie Cavallero and Cecil Moses, FBI agents who worked in Youngstown for a long time, victims of actual mafia bombings in Youngstown. We've done a podcast or a documentary. We've done live shows. We will have this documentary, The Cav Bomb. We're editing that now. That'll be out soon. And there's just everything's kind of happening and piling on one thing after another, and it's all organically.
Right.
So, if you're listening to this right now, Kenny Hyderis from the Sunrise Inn, he reached out to us early on, said, you guys should do a live show. Come down to the Robins. So, and great, we sold the thing out. 1,400 seats. So we started doing more shows. We did the one at the Standball. We returned to the Robins last week. So we've got all these different shows that we're doing, bringing people out, generating kind of helping the economy a little bit locally here. So Jim's absolutely correct. If you're watching this right now and you're in the Chamber of Commerce, or you're, a city leader, and you want to just kind of figure out, hey, how do we use our history to our advantage here and bring people downtown or bring people to a certain part of town or whatever it is, let's talk, because we got a lot of things we're working on, guys. And we just, we're looking to grow.
Yeah. We have to embrace the past, right? Because the past, if we forget about it, we're going to create those same mistakes over and over again. Right.
Yeah.
So let's embrace it. Let's use it as a way to bring people here to the community and to tell our story, because, if it wasn't for the mob and it wasn't for the steel mills, we wouldn't have all these stories. Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of where they grew hand in hand. And even after the steel mills were closed, they still continued to flourish. So, I get that people are kind of hesitant about because of the violence of the mob and things like that, but we need to embrace it and use it as a tool to drive tourism, to bring people here.
And I'll be honest, there's a little hypocrisy, because these same people who will, kind of shun us a little bit and turn away from us, they're watching Goodfellas on repeat, on loop at their house. There was someone I talked to that I won't name them or anything, but they worked in the Youngstown courthouse, and it was they were kind of questioning, oh, why would you do that stuff? Why'd you do-" And within 5 minutes, we're having a conversation, and they're, oh, I love Goodfellas. I watch it all the
Yeah.
time. I'm sorry, it's a little hypocritical, right?
Right.
So instead of that was what Henry Hill's story, and he was a rat from
Right.
from over there on the East Coast. It's like there's stuff here in Youngstown, stories that should be told. People don't know these stories from outside of Youngstown. They do not know these stories. So we're here, just shining a light on history, on things that happened here. And if you don't want to embrace it, I'm not going to say, hey, you have to embrace it. But guess what?
Right.
You can't forget it. You cannot ignore history. For after Lenny Strollo got pinched and the mob kind of collapsed in the end of the 90s, there was almost a 20-year span. There was a 20-year span where people here didn't like to talk about it.
Right.
And it was all, we need to move on, and we need to move on, and we need to ignore it as if it never happened. But guess what? Did that change anything for the better around here? No. Did anything get better around Youngstown in those 20-year span, Jim?
No.
No. In fact, a lot of things got worse.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to hear the whole, oh, if we don't get past the mob stuff, we'll never move on. We'll never move on. People say that, but guess what? There was a 20-year stretch where people tried to do that. They just tried to ignore the history, and they didn't move on. So I'm sorry. Things did not get better. So in fact, a lot of times, like we mentioned, things got worse in areas around here. So it's time that we say, you know what? Youngstown, people from the national media have come to Youngstown for 100 years almost, and have written stories about Youngstown, and have painted pictures about Youngstown, and exploited Youngstown, and said, okay, whatever the national narrative was, that's what they wanted to paint about Youngstown. But guess what? Nobody from Youngstown has been able to capture that and say, it's our turn to tell the story.
Yeah.
And, I was fortunate enough, I made a documentary in 2010 called Youngstown Still Standing. And after it was all over, after it premiered, people watched it. A lot of people around the valley watched it. I was proud to say that I think we did that. We finally gave people from Youngstown a chance to tell the story. And the more people from Youngstown that tell their stories and are able to shine the light and tell the story, Youngstown is so unique. When we realize it, we say, you know what? We're going to embrace that part of it. So, maybe you should embrace it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, we haven't even touched on, there's so much stuff to put out, right? There's so much content, but there's some stories that we haven't even told yet that are just going to blow people's minds.
Yeah, it's a lot to get to. We've been, as we mentioned, we've been approached by a publisher to do some books now. As a filmmaker, it's always been my dream to do a gangster story, a mob story, a Youngstown story, a true story. So early stages of that right now, we're working on, things to come. These are all big things to come. So again, definitely come out to the Crooked City Mob Night at Youngstown Phantoms game. That's going to be so cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait. We're going to do the puck drop, and then we'll be able to, meet and greet some of our fans that, enjoy what we do.
Yeah. And there's, next week, or for our next episode, I should say, we're going to have a special guest. We were talking a lot about, some of the people that were inspired by what we're doing, inspired by the podcasts that are out there. One of self-proclaimed our biggest fan will be with us, Miss Yvette Lavoie. So, it's going to be, she hosts a show called Bougie Sports. Does a lot of talk about the Browns, but she's been going into the Youngstown mob talk. And we said, hey, that's what we do too. Talking about, you want to talk Youngstown mob talk? Come on, we'll bring you on the show. We'll do her show. We'll do a little cross promotion, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
So
I won't hold it against her that she's a Browns fan either. So. Being that I'm a diehard Steelers fan.
So we'll figure it out. Though that'll be in our next episode. Stay tuned for that. If you guys have any questions, email us at steelvalleysyndicate@gmail.com. Also, by the way, check out that Pittsburgh group. It's been getting a lot of traction.
Yeah. The other group that we run is the Pittsburgh Mob. So if you haven't checked that out or joined that, please check that out. We've been getting a lot of posts on there. Youngstown native Jimmy Barber has been posting a lot of the early day stuff from like the early 1900s to like the 1930s.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. A lot of crazy stuff went on in Pittsburgh as well. So
That's on the Pittsburgh group on Facebook. So the Pittsburgh Mob, as you mentioned, Jimmy Barber, like he just put a ton of stuff in that group. I was learning stuff. There was, I guess some of the early days of the Pittsburgh Mob, a lot of the Pittsburgh gangsters migrated out to San Jose, California.
yeah,
And if you look at the Cerritos crime family out there, a lot of ex-Pittsburghers
yeah,
were in that group. So,
and some Clevelanders.
yeah,
Some Clevelanders went out there, and so we've got Cleveland guys going out. You got some guys from Youngstown went out that way. Some guys from Pittsburgh. So it's pretty neat, man.
as you mentioned, Jim, we are still learning.
Yeah,
We're not going to pretend. We're not, first of all, two guys who come on here and say that we know everything and we know this and we know that. And that's so far from the truth. We didn't live through a lot of the things. We're researchers, we're historians. So we like to talk to people. We like to learn, we like to read, we like to, watch whatever we can watch. We study this stuff. I've been studying this stuff for 20 years. You've probably been doing it just as long with your family history. We're not self-proclaimed know-it-alls. Okay. We are constantly learning new stuff. So we welcome everything and anything related to this, to the Youngstown Mob Talk stuff. Send it to us. Reach out to us anywhere you can. SteelValleySyndicate@gmail.com. That's our easiest way. Just email us and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and anything you do share with us, we will give you credit for sharing it. It's one of my big pet peeves that I see. I've seen other people come into our groups and, take our stuff and use it, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But, give credit to whoever it is. If somebody posted it and it's, say, a family photo or something, give them that credit and say, hey, this is courtesy of so-and-so from the Youngstown Mob Group.
Yeah, exactly.
Just give that credit. It's just a respectful thing to do.
Yeah, this thing is built on respect.
Exactly. This thing of ours. But hey, it's been another great episode, Johnny. For Johnny Ciccatelli, I'm James Naples. We'll see you guys next time.
Ciao.
That was an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like and subscribe buttons and share it with your friends. It goes a long way in helping us produce more amazing content.